Hi, it's Cameron Reynolds, and welcome to tonight's live chat. We are back to bees. So, if someone wants to have a question about the Bee Expo or two, we'll field it. But by and large, let's get back to bees. It's an exciting time of the year where we're all just ready for spring to get here. Except maybe if you're in southern Florida, you're already dealing with it. That's just blows my mind talking to some of the guys down there, and they're showing me some frames of brood and stuff, and I'm getting jealous and wanting to go down. But it's nice to have a little bit of a break too. And so, as Laurel and I and the kids are prepping stuff for this coming season, we find ourselves in the same position that we usually are in this time of the year, lying to ourselves about all the things that we're going to do better this year than we did the year before. And all the things that we think that we um, are going to be able to accomplish that we find out in June, like, what were we thinking? So, um, yeah, let's talk about spring. Exactly. Everyone's dealing with all this cold weather right now. Hello, everyone from frozen South Dakota. So, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, they're from all over the place. And we have a little bit of snow on the ground here in Tennessee, but it's just getting very cold for us in the single digits. And I've got a nice fire going downstairs in the basement that it's nice and radiating through the floors. And that's one of the perks of that. So, boy, my phone ding, ding, ding. Let's get to some questions. People are shooting me questions everywhere. So, Chris, throw one at me.
All right, we got one here from Matt Wood.
Hi, Matt. I've never heard you address it, but what's your honest opinion with the natural beekeeper views for the normal size operation? So, natural beekeeper view for the normal size, I imagine that would be a let the bees be bees and let's not be invasive and get in there. That works really good in certain locations of the world. And this is what you find many times. The people who are primarily touting that the most, either one, don't care about running um, a normal sized operation, or something that actually generates a certain level. We're going to produce this much honey. We're going to produce this much of this thing. And what you typically find, the bigger ones that are successful, and some of them are on YouTube, live in some of the primest real estate in the continental United States. And then the other ones that are doing it are in Hawaii. And it's a lot easier. Bees don't have to be fully immune to Varroa because a lot of them die, but it doesn't matter because they can reproduce so well in those long, productive, good seasons with lots of flows and lots of pollens. And so the natural views that I've seen in beekeeping, I've tried many of them. And if you're in an area that's less than ideal for that, you're just going to be crushed. And then, even if you do all the right things, you are going to really struggle if there's a lot of beekeepers around you that are not doing that, especially if you're trying to go treatment free. If you have a lot of people within flying distance that have bees that are not doing so, it's going to be very difficult to maintain that. So location is extremely important to that kind of beekeeping, and you're going to lose bees. Uh, Even 100 years ago, people before they were doing any types of treating at all, they were losing bees. And so I really have a hard time believing any of the people who, from any group, treatment free or not, saying that they don't experience losses, because it is just, you can't keep chickens without losses. Okay, yeah, over there, that's some nice area, some good honey. Josh has given me a couple jars in the past, delicious honey in that area. You know, I personally think give it a shot, but monitor your bees. One of the, I think the wisest things to do in that situation, it's not a bad idea, and but monitor. If you're going to go that route, out of 10 hives, maybe you're getting some better bees, or you found some bees cut out of a tree you feel have better genetics, but maybe only 7 out of 10 are actually good. The last thing that you want is the other 3 to come down with viruses, and your other hives will rob them out, and it can cause problems with them. No bees are immune to everything. That's the biggest problem I have with a naturalist view, is they act like everything can just handle anything. The bees can just handle it. And that's not the way the world works. It's not that easy, never been that easy. There's a lot of things that have gone extinct because they couldn't adapt. And there's a lot of plants that have diminished because they just aren't able to thrive as good with new pests and new problems. So I think keep an open mind on both sides of this spectrum. Not everything is treat, treat, treat. Not everything is let the bees be bees and all that kind of stuff. But there is a lot of middle ground, and um, I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't different ways of doing it. So just monitor things, because there's no reason to lose bees that don't have resistance. Just get in there. This one doesn't meet our criterion. Use a natural product, in my opinion, to clean it up, formic, thymol, and then requeen it with a better queen, either from your own or something like that. That's, and personally, I think that's a good way to be sustainable and also do right by your bees and not letting them come down with deformed wing virus and other problems. Anyone who um, is concerned about dogs being mistreated and stuff like that really needs to look at bees that have a lot of holes punctured in them from varroa and what they look like under a microscope with deformed wing virus. It's a terrible way to go. All right, next question. Hit that like button. Thank you, Jason Powell. Much appreciated. All right.
Hey, our next
Huh?
question is regarding our news for the evening. Do you want to punt that or talk about it now?
We'll just talk about it now. What are we talking about? All right. Yep, Nathan, I got that email, and we are actually working on a link. I think we're going to have that here in a second. We are going to get that taken care of here soon. I appreciate you looking. Oh, there's the link right there. We just have so much volume and stuff. It's easier if everyone goes through and fills this out so we have all the information, because we just have so much going on. We can't email one person here and one person there. So if anyone could fill this out, we will get back with you. We're just now rolling out the nukes. We haven't even really started taking orders until tonight. So I guess since we're talking about that, I'll make sure I have those for you, Nathan. You've been asking very patiently for a while, and I'll make sure that those are there for you. We are going to have nukes this year, but we're going to have something a little bit different than we've had in the past. So I am going to have several of my own nukes produced by us, and those are always not available until the end of April or the first week of May. And this is because we can't really start raising queens till the end of March. Now, those are going to be great nukes, but I'm also going to be offering a couple of my buddies. They run operations down in Florida and Georgia, and I'm going to be picking up their bees and bringing them up here and evaluating them. I've worked with them in other projects, and I've been down to their operations as well now, and I feel very confident in their bees. So anyone who wants early nukes, we're talking like March nukes. We're going to have those available, and they're going to be ready to go. They're raised up to the standards that Laurel and I have, which is they're raised from a queen cell, small, and they have to build the nuke up. Good quality combs. The queen, of course, is very young, but at this point, she's still laid for over a month, to where we can visibly see that she's a great queen. All of our queens are marked, and you'll be able to get those early nukes. And the advantage of that is, one, we can't provide. I'm only going to do like maybe a few hundred nukes this year, 250, somewhere like that I can produce myself. And so we have a lot of people that want a good source for nukes, and some people who would like to be able to make honey their first year. And, there's no guarantees. We can't, we don't know what your season's going to be like, but we have a lot of folks who get our nukes and go up to Illinois or to Michigan or Wisconsin with them, and they make honey off of them the first year, and they pay for themselves. And that's what we're hoping to offer with these early nukes, is a quality nuke that we guarantee, just like ours, that you have 10 days. If you see any issues, we will make it right. We'll swap out the nuke, whatever we've got to do. And the early nukes that you'll be getting, heck, you get them in March. And especially if you have a dead out from the previous year that has drawn comb, and you have supers, oh yeah, they can make honey, especially if you're somewhere around us. Now, so there's an opportunity there, and that's what I'd really like to offer, as a nuke that can pay for itself in the first year, or at least part of itself. That sounds like a really good idea. I was never able to do that when I got into beekeeping. So we'll have March nukes available. Who's supplying, Zach? Well, I don't give out all of the information. I will be getting some of your queens though, so I will share that. And is it okay if I share your phone number and all your discounted queens that you're going to have for everyone? But no, several of these guys are wanting to go through me because they don't want to be um, all over the place. They don't want to deal with them themselves. They don't want to deal with onesies and twosies. They want somebody else to do that. So I'm going to do it for them and all that kind of stuff. And the bees are gentle. We've gone through them. We've made sure that they're raising queens that we like. So NDA, yeah, no NDA, but probably should be. So, anyways, you can fill out that form below, and we will email you, and we will have high quality nukes available. If you get ours later in the season, it's $195. If you get the early ones in March, it's going to be $210. Is what that's going to be. So they'll probably sell out quick. So if you need bees, get them. And one last thing, if you have a bee club that wants to get a bunch of them, we can offer some type of special deal for large quantities as well. So we can deliver them. We have the capability of doing that. So any bee club that wants to get really good bees, we will take care of it. Hey, Jake Osborne's in the house. All right. So I gotta say, well, it's not hard to be better than today's football, Peabody's apiary, to be honest. It's not hard. Hey, Brian Reese, thank you so much for supporting our youth program and us through constantly hopping on and watching our videos and helping us at the expo. Thank you, Brian, and good luck there in Jersey with your bees overwintering. We'll be talking soon. And drop some questions if you have them. All right, John O has a question here. Question for people. Would it be better to leave a half drawn out, filled deep, it's a second deep box, or take it off and put hard candy on top? Just at a hive, starve out sadly, and I'm guessing it's due to distance. So it's possible. One of the things that beekeepers should do prior to temps getting really cold is evaluate what the food stores are like. Hopefully, before it gets too cold, feed them up and get it packed out. But if it's a good size cluster, there should be a lot of deep frames, mostly or completely full. And there's nothing wrong with condensing things down. Honestly, there's a lot of things right about it. I just found 2 colonies that were a little undersized on their cluster. They were about 5 to 6 frames. They looked really clean, but they were in a double deep box, and the food was scattered around in them. So it was 2 days ago. I took everything out of the top box. There was a couple good frames of food, but some of them were empty. And I took all the best frames from the top and the bottom box, putting them down all into the bottom. And it was quite cool. It was about 52 degrees. Those bees will be just fine. Actually, they'll be better than fine. They have plenty of food contact, and now they can regulate the temperature and their space a lot better. And so, yeah, if you need to condense them down, John, do that, and then put that candy right on top as well. Would not hurt. And then take that box off. The main concern with that box would be to protect it from mice. Usually in cold weather, wax moths aren't going to do a thing, but when the mice will love to get in there and make wreak some havoc. So just make sure you protect it. But oh yeah, there's many times it's advantageous to drop to a single, especially if the cluster is small. And for the people who are like, that's crazy, nobody does that. Ian Stepler does it up there in Canada, so it's something that's been done for a long time, and there's some advantages. So yeah, I would consider that.
Hey, you got a question here? Go ahead.
So I'm just going to grab this. I saw it earlier.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm your Huckleberry says, what's a good value oxalic acid vaporizer that's not going to break the bank? Well, it depends on the definition of breaking the bank. Is that $150? Is it $500? Is it $750? So there's a lot of different options out there. I always lean on, I would rather pay a little bit more, not get garbage. But there's some stuff that's more affordable that's not garbage. Larabi's does have some electric vaporizers that are cheaper. They're still, I think, around the $200 and something mark, 275. I can't remember where they're at. Electric vaporizers out there. There are some wand vaporizers out there that are even cheaper, but I would be very skeptical about getting any that are on Amazon that aren't from a good American company. There's a Varox something like that. It's made by the guys that do Pro Vap. It's some wand vaporizers. Those are a little bit more affordable. I haven't looked at them in a while, but the wand vaporizers take quite a while, and you have to really be careful that you don't leave it on too long. And there's been some people ignite their boxes because that wand gets so hot and it sits on that pine board. And there's been people burn their hives up with it. I think sometimes what happens is it gets close to wax maybe and propolis and it ignites that stuff and then it catches the pine. Everything in the hive is quite flammable. So besides the honey, the beekeeper was not honest about that. That stuff is not very flammable. But there's some cheaper options on Amazon. A lot of them burn out so quick because they're just pieces of garbage. So this is an important tool. Controlling mites is extremely important. And I look at if it can save me 2 colonies over the course of a couple of year period, it's paid for itself, and it will if you use it correctly.
You want me to grab that next one?
Sure.
Okay, Chicken for Eggs posted this, over an hour ago.
Here's a question. What are the viable options when you have to split a hive because it's packed solid, but the weather is not yet warm enough to facilitate queen mating activity? So Chicken for Eggs. I imagine, I don't know if they're still on, but you're talking about maybe doing a walkaway split. And yeah, that's a rough situation to be in. And this is why I think it's so, so important for all new beekeepers and beekeepers are getting to a few years in. Plan ahead as much as you can. Go, okay, these are some of our prime colonies. And at some point, they are going to need to be split. Do you already have a queen ready to go? Maybe you don't want to buy a queen. I have not a very good experience with walkaway splits. And then if you have poor weather, that can be an issue. But let's say the weather's not yet warm enough to facilitate queen mating. I kind of need a little bit more details on that because let's say you are talking about a walkaway split. First, they've got to raise that queen and it's got to go through days and days of development. Then it's got to emerge out of the cell, stick around for a couple of days, and then it can fly over a course of more than a week. And so it doesn't have to get it right on the first day. So is your weather going to be poor for the next 14 days? You could make a split soon and hurry up and order a queen. It's hard to get a queen this time of the year. So I imagine if you're needing to split, you're somewhere California, Florida, Texas, maybe not in the United States. But this is maybe what I would do. If you have extra hives and they're not all like that, maybe a few of them could use a boost. Swap out some frames, give those smaller colonies. This is called equalizing, and we do this all the time. So maybe pull those bigger colonies back. If you have another one, give it to them. And this is, again, where it's advantageous to have multiple colonies because you'll always have different colonies in different stages. And you can actually keep some from swarming by equalizing, and you can get some ready for the honey crop and get most of your yard on the same basically page to where if they all need supers, it's at the same time. Excluders, they all need split at the same time. It's really a good business practice. So equalizing is an option. I think you'll add a box. Well, that would be good too. Add a box, pull up a frame in there, but those bees will eventually want to swarm or split in some form or fashion if they're really good bees, and it sounds like they are. All right, Chris, next question.
Well, a quick shout out to Dave Dwyer. He gave some gifted subscriptions, memberships to 10 different people. There, if you're in the chat, he gifted them to Clay, Carol, Mike, Murdoch, John, Brian, 33 Mile Bees, Thomas, Matt, Ripple, and Brian. So just shout out to Dave for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dave, again for doing that and for being one of our biggest supporters of not just our youth program, but our memberships and all of the folks that are our members. Thank you for being one. And we have several in the house. One in particular, Bonnie Joseph from London, Kentucky. Good to see you, Bonnie. Hope you guys are doing up there, having a good Sunday evening. It's good to see you guys really briefly there at the Expo. I got to see a lot of you briefly at the Expo, but I don't think I spent much time with anybody. But it was quite a whirlwind, and it was fun. All right, let's get to another question.
Okay. Got one here from Tom or Melissa.
Cayman, have you taken your wife on a vacation yet? If not, you need to take a break. Thanks for your dedication. Yeah, I hope Laurel's not watching. I am going to take her to that lizard conference. So there is that. It's not called that, but I can't remember what it's called. Reptile Con something. Anyways, I'm sure it'll be fun. It's not too far away. The problem with a vacation is it takes a lot of work to get ready for a vacation, and honestly, we just have so much going on. We were talking about all the things we have going on, prepping for the season this year. And there's just a lot of weekends already tied up with other things. So I don't know if it's going to happen this off season. We'll figure that one out. Well, if it is, we'll do something short lived. Just go to a museum or something. Repticon.com. Is it really that? Cool.
Yeah. It sounds like Matt's really excited to go.
Yeah, lizard conference. Yeah, Laurel loves all kinds of critters. Yeah, Tom. Yeah, I did spend way too much time with you. I told her I'm like I'll be back up to the room by like 10:30 or whatever. I had to go and do some work with Chris because there were some things that happened at the expo that it wasn't bad, but just work that him and I needed to iron out so it'd be perfect the following day and nobody would know. And so I didn't get to the crown till about 11 p.m. And then you and a bunch of other Canadians were down there. And of course, you just wouldn't let me get away. You just, and then I may have contributed just a hair. And yeah, what was it, like midnight or no, 1 o'clock before I got up to the room, and Laurel just looked at me, shook her head, and went back to sleep. But she kind of knows the drill at this point. Good. Thanks for coming to our conference, Tom, and getting me in trouble yet again. The most disruptive and contrary Canadian I've ever met. Very American of you.
All right. Got next question for you here from Jigsaw.
What's the better hive box right now? Is there any particular brand or type you would not get? And what wood is best for a box? So, boy, what a loaded question, but not a bad one. So, the most important thing, truly, is how healthy the bees are. How big the cluster is. Do they have plenty of food? And do they have a good queen? That's the most important thing. But if you're in an extreme area, then insulation can be very helpful. It not only conserves resources, but since it conserves resources, if your bees can't get a cleansing flight for a long period, that means there's less ash content, less buildup in their guts, and less chance of there being issues with a long-term having to basically hold it for months. So insulation can be very helpful at times. As far as wood boxes go, I'm a big fan of white pine if I'm going to get a wood box or cypress. The Amish boxes can be pretty good, other than the fact that I don't like if they assemble them. Oftentimes there's a lot of warpage afterwards and the top or the bottom can separate. I do not like this at all. It really over a long period of time, it makes it to where the frames sometimes want to drop through the box. And one thing I don't like about the Amish boxes is they're not really kiln dried all the way. And so there's some shrinkage and swelling. So if any box you get, assemble them quickly. If it's unassembled, get it home, assemble it. Don't wait months, get it done, because that stuff can change on you. But the Amish boxes are rough on that. Now the Amish boxes are cheaper. So that's a lot of times where I get my cypress from if I want to do that. These days, I typically get boxes from Premier, Hilco, which they get their boxes from Beeline, or Miller Bee Supply. There's several good woodenware producers. I've really fallen in love with the Premier grooves, though. It's more expensive, but boy, those grooves are fantastic. It's definitely the best joints in the industry. Just like the other ones, though, you get it, you assemble it immediately. You do not wait. Things can just swell and change. Now, as far as insulated hives go, there's Apame, there's polystyrene hives, like Hive IQ system. there's a lot of advantages to insulated hives. They are more expensive. Some disadvantages. One is with the poly ones, they can be more fragile, and they're just, I don't know. They're bulky too, so they take up more space. They're just more fragile is the biggest problem. The Apame hives are the strongest hive that I've ever worked with, and they have several neat features. They're one of the more expensive hives, but I think you really get your money's worth out of it long term because you got a feeder, you got a pollen trap in there. The Apame hive is a premium hive for sure. It's just so stinking durable, and they stack well with each other. The handles on them are nice. They're great. Insulated hives keep your bees from burning through resources and their bodies in wintertime and in summertime because bees are using their lifespan to heat and cool the hive. So, advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons, all that kind of stuff. Insulation is better for bees. It's just basic math, but bees do well in a lot of different cavities. And I've seen bees overwinter in some bizarre stuff: tires, abandoned diesel tanks. So, good, healthy bees is the number one recipe to success. And then after that, a nice little spot for them to live would be nice. But there's a lot of good options out there. Top bar hives, you name it. Speaking of top bar horizontal hives and top bar hives, I had a question earlier on the Facebook group, and it was in regards to checkerboarding frames into them, because when you have a horizontal hive, it's splayed out all in one long row, and I really have enjoyed mine. It's been fun and different. Definitely not suited for large scale production, but someone that's running a couple dozen hives, I think, could enjoy them quite nicely, maybe more. So those hives, you do have to bring empty combs in and checkerboard into them more. So there's a little bit more maintenance there, but it's not that bad. Again, if you're not running that many hives, that's great. And you got to consider, hey, I'm not picking up boxes and setting them down and picking them back up and putting them back on. So, I mean, you're trading one thing for the other. But yes, if you're running a horizontal hive, you're going to have to do a little bit more frame manipulation than a standard Langstroth setup. But big deal. There's advantages and disadvantages to that setup, and it's just really cool, frankly. Want to say hi to Richard Noel. He's been in the group, and I chatted with him earlier today. It was nice to catch up with him. Very jealous of his honey house. And I want to say hi to Bee Haven from Newfoundland, who helped me make fun of Ian Stepler at the Bee Expo this year, as we both gave him a knee for not being there. So, Ian, if you're watching this, meh. All right, next question.
All right, question here from Gigi.
Hi, Gigi. I am setting up my hives for the first time this year. When I get my packages, what do you suggest as an initial varroa plan, and how soon after installing should I apply it? If you're planning to do oxalic acid vapor, I highly recommend coming back into the package about 9 days later and seeing what's going on. Oxalic acid vapor is one of the most gentle treatments that we have. So if you're doing that, it can be really advantageous if you can hit them before they actually cluster up. So we don't want to do it while the queen's getting accepted, because with a package, they make these up probably about, hopefully, a couple days, no more than 2 days before you get them. But that queen comes from a different location, and they put her in there. And then they start accepting her through that period of her being in a cage. And then there's the process of her being released from the cage and then beginning to lay. And what really solidifies a queen is after she has brood, and the brood is emitting pheromones. And so this can take a little time, and we definitely don't want to use a treatment early on. But when the queen lays her first egg, it'll be 9 days until they cap that brood. And so whenever you install that package, I have a video on a couple different ways to do this. Whenever the day it is that you open up the cork and let them eat through the candy slowly and get her out, just plan on coming back 9 days later. Make sure that they have some food, because they are going to need this to keep warm and to start drawing comb. And so I usually come back a couple days after I've installed and just quickly make sure to pull out everything like the queen cage and stuff, because if you have that in between, that messes up the bee space between those frames, they'll build some weird comb in there. So come back a couple of days later, very quick. Don't be using smoke if you can help it, or if you do, just a light bit of it. And once that queen is out of that cage, we are going to let her just take that queen cage out. And maybe if you don't want to use smoke there, you can just spritz a little bit of sugar water. That helps a lot with those situations. Works great in early spring because there's not robbing. You do that in summertime. If there's a robbing season, sugar syrup is a terrible idea. So what we're going to do, though, is that day that that queen, we think that she's emerged from that cage, we're going to come back 9 days later at the latest. 8 would be better. And we are going to do an oxalic acid vapor treatment if we have that tool. And that is going to crush the mite load very gently. But if we were to do that earlier, it wouldn't be good. Now, if we don't have that tool, we really need to start thinking about something that's gentle, but starting early. Because one of the worst things beekeepers do on a regular basis is wait until the mites are a problem. If we kill mites when they're low, they'll never get high. And it's high mite loads that have impacts, and they're making impacts to your bees before you'll ever be able to visibly see the difference. We don't want to get to 1% mite loads. There's a product called Viroxan out there. I haven't tried it a lot, but I do like oxalic acid extended release, and that's something that's very gentle and not very disruptive, and doesn't build up in your wax, and doesn't, you can even use it with honey supers on. It's that safe, very organic compounds. And so you can start that, let's say a month after you've installed those bees would be a good time, and leave those in. And then I would come back after you've had bees for, once that treatment is completed, and then do a mite wash, and then check and see where we're at. And you'll probably be fairly low. We've done tests on packages, and usually you can't even detect mites 3 months hardly after the fact. They're very low, but they just grow so quickly. They double every brood cycle unless something breaks them up. So anyhow, just monitor. Sometimes you'll find that you don't need a treat. And some of the products like Formic and Thymol, while they are very natural, they're very disruptive because they shut down brood pheromones, queen pheromones, and things that are in close proximity to the product itself. You can actually burn the brood up. So this is where I think it's valuable to actually do a wash. Some people are like, well, you're killing bees doing this. But if you're using Formic or Thymol or most products, especially the natural ones, you are going to be either really slowing brood production down, which eliminated population, or you are going to be actually burning a little bit of brood in the process. You're in California, so finding legal Varroa treatment can be a challenge. Oh, that is a really tricky, because the reason it's not legal in California to use oxalic acid is because California makes it so expensive for the product to be registered there, and the companies don't find it worthwhile to pay the yearly fees and all the bull crap that comes with it. And so that's part of the reason why oxalic acid, from my understanding, is not in your state. There are some other products out there. You have a long season, so just chip away at them, and keep us posted, Gigi. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Good luck with your bees. California is a great state for beekeeping. I just had some California star thistle honey for breakfast this morning with my biscuits, and star thistle honey is definitely one of my favorites. It is amazing. Next question, Chris.
Well, we're going to cut the line with Gary here, and then we'll go back to the top. But I thought Gary had a nice point to what you were just talking about.
I've never done it, but I wonder if a person could treat a package of bees with OA while they're still in the package still, so they can't abscond. The problem with that, Gary, is because I've tested this myself. We put them in a closed environment and treat them, and it does a very terrible job because the bees are clustered up so tight. The vapors don't permeate the cluster properly, and this is why we really need them to spread out. So if there was a way to get them spread out more to single or even 2 bee layers, it would be possible. With a tight, thick cluster, you're just not getting hardly any penetration to those bees in the center of that cluster. And what we did is we took several packages and we hit them, and we did drop a handful of mites, but it was extremely low. And then we installed them, waited until the bees were spread out and put a sticky board underneath. And then we did it again. We dropped a lot more mites than we did before. So it's really just how tight the cluster is. And this is why we wait and do them in wintertime when the clusters are busted up. We don't want to do it when it's 30 degrees, ideally 50 degrees Fahrenheit or upper 40s. And what you can do to kind of bust up the clusters a little bit when it's a little on the cool side is smoke the bees first. And it kind of breaks that cluster a little bit if there is a little bit of one. And then you can hit them with that oxalic acid vapor. Yeah, and maybe you could, Gary. If you're a little bit more hands-on and if have maybe a way you can spread them out a little bit better, you probably could. One of the things that would be interesting to do would be to remove the queen and then actually, warm the bees up to a certain temperature. The problem of it is when you're doing packages or nukes or anything, you want to keep the bees cool. The warmer they are and the more they move, the quicker they are going to expire and run around and beat each other up. And so it's kind of one of those things where you don't definitely don't want to lose a lot of bees in the process of doing this. It's something to think of. I'm sure there's a better way to do it. Maybe a day or two after install, just don't let the queen come out of the cage. Just leave the queen in the cage maybe for an extra 2 days. Hit them with oxalic acid vapor while they're already installed. And then after the vapor treatment's done, just wait till the oxalic acid dissipates. Then go in and uncork the queen. It's a lot of extra manual labor, but it is a wonderful opportunity to get a very clean set of bees started. Packages typically have over 100 mites. There are some packages that I've had buddies who are in this chat room send me pictures of that came from treatment-free sources, and they must have been treatment-free all right. They must have dropped 800 mites per package. It was a lot of mites in those packages. Can't hardly count them all. So anyhow, next question, Chris.
Yes, sir. The one and only Jeff Jeffers has a question here for you.
All right. What breed do you recommend to requeen a hive? Not one that's not inbreed. So we definitely don't want any queens from. Yeah, sorry. I just thought of something hilarious, but I'm not going to say it. I've picked on Kentucky people enough, but you probably get what I'm thinking.
This is too early to mute you in the stream.
That's right. I know. So all jokes aside, I've had a lot of different queens, and really it's all about the quality. There are different characteristics. Yeah, sorry, Jake. And all the queens in the United States are mutts. They really are. Honeybees thrive on genetic diversity. Not all bees are good at pollen gathering. Not all bees are good at water gathering. You really need a diverse group of bees, but therein lies the rub. What do you want? Do you want bees that are a little bit more thrifty and they don't eat through as much food? They don't keep as big of bees. That would be more of a carny type strain. But there's definitely no pure carnies out there. There are some that are as close as we can get them. And so there's new world carnies out there. There's old world carnies out there. Guys like Shabu here in Tennessee have AI'd carnies with Caucasian lines. Caucasians usually produce more propolis. But this is characteristics and colors that is giving us this. If you probably did a DNA test, you'd find so much Italian in these bees, more than you would think. And then with the Italian bees, it's kind of the same thing. I've had wonderful Italians. They do require a little bit more feeding, but they are really good about some other things. And some of the Cordovans are beautiful and very gentle. And Russian bees are really just a very aggressive carny, and they keep very tight clusters, but they explode really well once they get going. So it really just depends on what you want. I would be happy with a good Italian, a good Russian, a good carny. But definitely, I think the Russians of the three are a little bit more difficult for newer beekeepers because they do want to swarm a little bit more quickly, and they just blow up so fast. But they definitely have some advantages too. And Richard Coy and his brothers, they have a lot of good information online. But yeah, I got some queens from Zach out of Hawaii. I was surprised they actually wanted to work. Most of the people I've met in Hawaii just didn't really want to work that much. but those queens were great. And Ian Stepler, one of his last I heard, one of his genetic lines up there in Canada is from some of the queens that he got out of Hawaii. So some of the localized genetics is overblown. What we want is a well-mated queen that's going to lay good, create healthy, diversely very accomplished set of worker bees, and ultimately give me a well-mated queen that lays well, and I just don't care. So that was a long way of saying it doesn't really matter that much to me.
All right. If we have any Kentucky people still left in here. Do you want to talk about the expo briefly? Someone had a question about it?
Yeah, just briefly.
Perfect. It's a good question.
Hey, Jerome, thanks for being one of our members. And at this year's expo, what are the products that caught your eye? Ooh. Well, Sandra and her husband had that AZ hybrid style hive they brought all the way from Canada, and that was beautiful. And Frederick Dunn and several other people have videos, but Frederick has a good interview with them. And I wasn't able to look at it in depth. I was just so busy, and I really wanted to. It was just so cool. And I love seeing just the unique stuff like that. There was some really cool oh, hey Laurel, bring me that jar, would you? There were several neat products. Of course, there was a gentleman, 21st Bee. He had some new style of plastic frames that beetles couldn't get into. The new round jar that I like. Could you bring that in, please? Of course, there were, John had his uncapper. Dadent had a few different extractors. Cowan had some different extractors. It's easy to love the stainless steel. Honestly, I like some of the subtle little things that like cool jars. So this may not be that special to some of you guys, but it's got dust all over it. I apologize, but this is some of our honey. I really like these jars. I got from Hidden Hollow's booth where they had dancing bee supply in there with, and there was like a hybrid booth of 3 to 4 companies. And I just really like these jars right here. I think they're really cool. And I'm going to get a round label on them and try them out. So this will be good, I think, for creamed honey. I'm really looking to have some jars that are different from my standard queen line looking jars just to set apart. So that, and, there's some, Rob had a new vaporizer, the light, people had heard about that. I really like seeing Apis Tactical there for the first time. They weren't able to get their bee suits in time, but they did have their gloves. So there's just so many. I really can't think. Whenever someone asks me this, I never can think of the things. I did get some of my own gear from Cowan. So I'll be doing a video on that whenever I get a chance. But anyways, I'm terrible at this. This was sorry. I'll think of it 30 minutes after the chat. Maybe I'll try to write a list for the next time.
There you go. Be a good video. Great question here from Alan.
Hi, Alan. Thanks for hopping on. Tell your wife I said hello, and to make sure that she doubles down on keeping you busy. So what incubator do I use? It is the Genesis HOVA baiter from Cutler Bee Supply. And Bob Benny is the one that put me on those. And it's Genesis something, I can't remember. It's like something 88, but it's just a chicken incubator, but it has a fan. I think it's very affordable. You can stick all kinds of queens in there. I have several videos on using that. And it is just it's a wonderful little device. It's simple. You just plug it in, put a sponge in there that's been soaked in water so there's plenty of humidity, and set the temperature where you want it. You can stick a couple hundred queen cells in there, and or close to a couple hundred queen cells, and it works just fine. Easy to transport, hook into a inverter in the car, and I just use it all the time. It's a good little incubator.
Real quick, going past it, I'll plug your nuke sales again if you guys are interested.
Just real quick, so yeah, the nukes are $195. I'm sorry, I told you wrong. $198 for our nukes in late April, early May. These are all guaranteed to have 3 great frames of brood minimum, and some new combs in there. Nothing is old, like ancient, black, nasty stuff. We just burn that stuff, melt it down actually. So you have good quality combs. All the queens are raised from a queen cell. These queens have been evaluated. The queens have never seen a cage. I think this is the best way to get queens and to get nukes, because the queen had to build that nuke up. And then if you're wanting to get the early nukes from some of my buddies, they're coming through me because they don't want to deal with the onesies and twosies, and I can't produce enough nukes for demand. These nukes are fantastic nukes. I'll have them as early as early March, like the 10th, 14th. So we'll be communicating quite quickly on that, and I'll have limited amounts of both. And if you're wanting to hop on those and get some good nukes, we'll be doing that. Chris and I are talking about having a pickup in Ohio as well, because Chris is up there, and he's going to be working for me, and so we got some business to do with each other anyhow. And so I thought maybe it would be cool to bring up some bees for there in Ohio. So we're looking at possibly having a pickup in Tennessee, Ohio, and also possibly Missouri. We're looking right now at partnering with Corey Stevens on having some Corey Steven VSH inclined bees. So those more information on those in the future. But yeah, we're going to have nukes. And if you want them, and like I said, if you have any issues within 10 days, you reach out. We will swap that nuke out. We'll make it right. You get what you pay for when you get something from Laurel and myself.
Cayman, somebody did ask about having any bees available through Hilco or at Hilco this year.
So that we've done that in the past. I don't think it's going to work out this year, and it's not because John doesn't want it to. John does. The problem of it is when I sell to John, he just wants my nukes exclusively. That's the thing. And I'm only going to be able to produce, I think, 250 this year. So that's not a lot. I can sell those pretty easily myself. And, if I can get 198 myself, why take them up to John and take a several dollar hit? Because he's got to make money off of them too. And I totally get it. I just don't think it makes sense for him or for me. So that's probably why it won't work out. At least at this point. I am hoping that we're going to be ramping up our operation again in the future and going to be able to offer a lot more nukes and maybe be able to work with Hilco. But honestly, Hilco's kind of outgrown me at this point. As much as John's doing, I don't think I'm too far north to be really the best supplier for him, to be honest. Someone further south would probably be better. But he knows I sell good bees because my reputation's on the line. And if I don't, I'll hear it in the comments over here. So, this is good. Accountability is very good. We need more of that in the industry. But I don't think that's probably going to happen this year. And John, if this is the first time you've heard it, sorry, buddy, but it's just not going to work out this year. It's not you. It's me. That kind of thing.
Oh, boy. All right. Clancy has a question here for you about something from Black Mountain.
Cayman, you see the multiplex nuke that Lawrence from Mount was talking about today? Yeah, I actually did see that, which is strangely enough, I don't a lot of times see all those UK videos. So I thought that was really fascinating because we have guys. One of them is my buddy Zach, and who is using these smaller frames. They're like mediums, but they're like squares instead of a long medium. And so it's a different style, and it's easier to find the queens, but it's still a lot bigger than a baby nuke or anything like that. And so, boy, my computer is glitching. What in the world? There we go. Sorry about that. So I think that might be really handy, possibly, to try out for making it. If we could make one as long as one of our regular medium frames and like just have a couple attach and boom, 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 you have it. And now you get the beads to draw out a regular medium like a honey super, and then you could just pull them apart, and now you have individuals for queen mating. That could be useful. I'm just not super familiar with the stuff that they do over there in the UK, and so they may need it for another purpose. But most of the time you see square frames like that pull apart, it is to be used for raising queens, and I imagine that is what that's for. I would love to learn more about it, and I'm I hope that Lawrence will keep me posted on that if Lawrence ever hears about this. It's just so hard to keep up with everything. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the bee industry right now, and it's awesome. A lot of excitement.
All right, next question here from Ron Smith about queens.
Cayman, what about queens? Will you be having any? Ron, probably not. We just probably won't. It takes a lot of time and resources, and my goal is to just make honey and nukes here in Tennessee, then as quickly as possible yank that honey off and haul those bees up to Wisconsin and make honey up there and then split. I may have bees in summer to sell as well, and they will be my queens also. I'll probably be ordering some from Zach so that any of mine that don't take will be, I'll have backups, and that's probably what I'll do. But no, I won't be selling any queens. If I do sell any queens this year, it'll be somebody like Zach's queens probably. Let's see.
You want the next one?
Yeah, I'm just gonna hit this one. Yeah, it is funny that John's based out of little. That it's a super small town. It's like the town I live in, and it's really cute. But Hilco's like half the town, maybe more. It is pretty neat. But John's done a lot in 5 years, and that's what we want to see. Our industry desperately needs multiple companies, not just Hilco, to come in and invest into our industry. The competition cannot be overstated. The need for all sectors of this industry, whether you're a commercial beekeeper, whether you're a hobby beekeeper, whether you're a company selling product, or whether you're a YouTuber or running a conference, everybody needs competition so that the entire industry is forced to continue to go forward. And so I think John is a catalyst for a lot of creative change in our industry. That several companies don't like that very much, and that's fine with me. But we definitely need more and more people getting in, being creative. And the Bee Expo really is all about that, is putting all those people that are movers and shakers in one spot and letting the beekeepers decide, hey, this is what I like. These are the people that I like. And they vote with their dollars, and it makes a difference. All these Ohio State fans, what in the world? Why do they even hop on here?
Calm down. Calm down.
Calm down. Why don't you just mute yourself too?
Okay.
I'm just kidding. So, all right.
Okay.
Jenny says, hey, Cayman, your thoughts on the best products or ways to sell comb honey? And I believe that she had a question, above that as well, related to that. Best products or ways to sell comb honey. Hey, Laurel, my love.
Y'all are going to see a frying pan come flying in.
It's going to happen. All right. So during this commercial break, we are going to be talking about some of the cool honey that I just got from Sweden. This came from Yasmin. She actually sent me two different ones. One is darker and this one is lighter. So if Yasmin, if you see this, thank you very much. I have never had honey from Sweden, and it is awesome. Very floral, and I love it. I don't know what it is, but maybe you can cue me in on that later. Nobody listens to me, Chris. No one, they're ignoring me.
I-O.
Oh, I thought he was like, uh-oh. Hey, Jimmy. I live alone.
You run them all out of the house.
All right, give me the comb honey, the little square one, please, and then the one the plastic as well, the thin one. All right. Yeah. Well, I like to live life on the edge. All right, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, son. You're a good boy. You're going to get an attaboy for that. But just remember, you can get 10 attaboys, but it only takes one off Fooey to wipe them all out. So move along. Shut the door. Thank you. That's character building advice right there, by the way. I got that from my Papa Jim, who also had some other advice, which I gave to a beekeeper today who was talking about all the craziness going on in their lives. And I just said, you know what? My grandpa had some wise words for moments like this. And it was, life is hard. and then you die. So you know what? Words to live by. What a funny guy. All right. So, Jenny, to your question, I have done comb honey and chunk honey, cut comb honey and chunk comb. So, I don't have a jar of that with me, but I do have different sections here. So, this is a 2x4 section that I've had for a while. I got last year in the almonds from Phil Hofflin, who is just a really nice guy. And he's got more energy than anyone has a right to have. But this star thistle honey is awesome. So I've been just eating away at it. This is the way I most of the time sell mine. I sell it for $8 for a big piece that's quite full, and for one that's a little bit on the skinnier side, I usually go 7. And do it at a farmer's market or whatever. I don't wholesale that, but we don't produce a lot of it. Now, when I put it into a jar, it's quite simple. Usually it's the less ideal pieces that maybe just have a little section that didn't get quite filled out, or they're a little bit short or a little bit thin, or we made a mistake. And I put those into the chunk as well. So the best ways to sell it, honestly, is give some small samples out. You can make really small slivers of this at a farmer's market or whatever, and sell it with some bread, or show it with some bread, excuse me, because honey can be quite strong, especially to the first time consumer. And then if it has wax, that can be a new experience as well. So having like a really nice homemade bread works really good for us. You just take a small sliver of it, put it on a nice piece of bread, and that helps cut that down and make it a lot more palatable. And once people try that, oh yeah, it's sold. So that's the way that I prefer to do it. Here is a Ross round from Lori Shiflett. Thank you, Lori, for giving this to me at the Bee Expo. You gave me 2 of these, which is super generous. I'd never seen these before. Both of them were just gorgeous. And then this is a simple comb. The problem with these methods is you have to buy them, and the bees can be a little bit slower to accepting those versus doing a Gus Mitchell style, was what I call Gus Mitchell style, because he taught me. But there's a lot of guys out there that you use just regular beeswax foundation, and Walter T. Kelly had a great foundation, and Man Lake still uses Walter T. Kelly's machines to make the high quality, very thin wax sheets for cut comb. And so personally, I'm a cut comb person. I am trying some of these other methods just because I find it interesting, but it's hard to beat that. I like to use the comb cutter that was made by Pierce, and cut comb is the best way to do it, in my opinion. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to slice it. You can also sell small Ziplocs for $1. We can call them grab bags. We sell hundreds at fairs. So Ziplocs of them. Honestly, I think that there was a company that was out there and probably still is around, and they had really small cubes, and they were selling them for an arm and 2 legs. And I do think the beekeepers could take something from that and go, okay, maybe a 2x4 for a lot of people is a lot, especially if maybe we're charging more than $8 a piece. Maybe we cut that in half and it's a 2x2, and we're selling that for $5 a piece. Dave Lapp, Laurel earns sainthood daily. I mean, she's already got the express pass for sainthood, man. That card was punched a long time ago, but everyone has their cross to bear. Laurel just didn't know how big it would be when she married me.
All right, you ready for the next question?
Yeah, hit me.
All right. Well, I can't hit you. You're too far away. Okay, you already hit all those. I just want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Oh.
I got impatient. Sorry.
That's fine.
I'm wondering on the possible pickup site for your nukes in Tennessee should you succeed in offering. I'm in the Short Mountain area. So pickup site is going to be in my town of Gainesboro. That's where we always do it. My property is not big enough to house. Usually we'll sell like 200 in a day. So it's pretty action packed. And also we don't know what the weather's going to be like. And so if it's really rainy, we don't want people getting stuck out in the grass. So we have a nice gravel location in Gainesboro that we rent for this event. And we do that a couple of times in what's going to be March and April and early May. this year. So we'll have dates coming out soon, but we will have those dates available to anyone who fills out that form. And then we'll shoot you the dates and the way to reserve your nukes at, and if you want the early nukes or the late nukes or whatever, we'll have those details out in the future. But yes, if we do it in Ohio, it's going to be up near Chris. And Chris, where you're like Toledo or something, right?
Yeah, just south of Toledo. I'd say probably we'll just call it the Bowling Green area. There's lots of good, solid farmland and safe places around there.
Sure. And like I said before, if anyone has any bee clubs that want to order a bunch of nukes, we can work on, delivery, as long as it's not like 16 hours away. I'm not interested in that, but anything within, relatively, 10 hours is probably as far as I go if there's enough nukes, but I'm not going to do it for 10 nukes. So, and we can work on prices if someone wants 50 nukes or 100 nukes. We can work on things a little bit better. So, communication, just send us an email, all that kind of stuff. All right, Chris, get to your next question that I interrupted, please.
No problem. I just want to make sure we don't miss any because there's a lot of good ones. All right, I'm going to totally mispronounce this name. I think it's Aaron or Aran. He has a question here for you.
What type of stands do you have your Apame hives on? So nothing extra special at all. So just pressure treated 2x4s typically. Sometimes 2x6s. Have some concrete blocks on the ground, some cinder blocks, boards on top. Keep it pretty simple. You can use a lot of different things for that. There's some fancier stands out there. What I like to do with the Apames, because the bottoms, they do have their own stands, but I don't like to put on them because it's a small profile for just some boards. And so you have like the feet here, and then it kind of goes up, and you have a middle section that goes down, it goes up, and then there's the other foot back here. And so I like to run the boards actually in between where those feet are, and so they cannot slide off hardly at all. And that works really good.
Yep, I will concur with your agreement. They tend to slide on me when you try to get them up on the feet. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yep, keep them off the feet, or if you're going to use the feet, it better be a big flat surface.
All right. Okay, I have more. I just want to make sure I'm missing. Andrew has a great question here for you.
Hey, Andrew, any recommendations on the super rocket fuel that Stepler is using? So, well, we bring in a semi-load of pollen patties that have that stuff in it each year for the Bee Expo, and they've got two different products. So oftentimes they're kind of lumped in together, but you have ultimately what biocontrol is for sugar syrup, and then the bioactivator is for pollen sub. So if I'm mixing my own, let's say I'm using Ultra Bee from Man Lake, I will get a packet of his bioactivator and throw that in. I really like the product. The pollen subs mainly focus on the big stuff, proteins, fats, the big minerals and amino acids, of course. But there's so much little stuff, very little stuff that's quite important. And so it's good for that. There are other products that get mixed with patties and sugar syrup, but most of the time they're just preservatives or stimulants. And I'm going to get on a little segue here. Why in the world does sugar syrup need a stimulant? I've never had problems with bees going after sugar. If the bees don't want to go after sugar syrup, it's one or two reasons. One, there's a honey flow going on. Or two, those bees are sick. They're queenless. There's something wrong. Typically, when we're going through a yard in summertime and we see hives that aren't eating their food, we know something is bad in that colony, and we need to dig into it further. It's actually a great mechanism to know which colonies are wrong. So we have 40 colonies in a yard, and we fed them 2 weeks before on our last time in, because we usually do about every other week in summer. And this year's here in Tennessee. And then I'm just like, all right, out of the 40, this one's eat its food. So all we do in the inspection is pull out a frame. Yep, good frame of brood. Yep, that box is heavy. They have plenty of food, good brood patterns. I'm seeing some eggs or very young larvae. Everything looks healthy. It's good. If that's all we needed to do is just check the colony, then that's like a 2-minute inspection. Boom. But then we'll keep doing those 2-minute inspections, 2 to 3 minute inspections. And then, oh, this one still has some pollen patty, or this one has sugar syrup left in the frame feeder. What is going on? And always it's a queen issue. The mite loads are too high. something is wrong. And sometimes it's just they've requeened themselves. They're in the process of that. And once that new queen comes back and starts laying, they start consuming food great again. So um, that was a little bit of a segue, a little tip there. But the rocket fuel, if I'm going to spend extra dollars for supplements, it's my favorite stuff. It makes sense. It's not like we're reaching to try to create something to help the bees. We're just mimicking the same stuff that's already in pollen and nectar with these products. So, any recommendations? Use it at the critical times of the year. I'll be honest, I don't use any supplement every time that I feed because it's expensive. And especially if there's some good stuff fixing to come, I don't worry about using it a lot. It's really on your most stressful times of the season going into winter. We need the healthiest bees. So late summer, early fall, this is when I'm going to really focus the most on getting the best nutrition into my bees. And if there's some stressful periods leading up to the late winter pollen flows and stuff, that's where I'm also going to feed some stuff. Sometimes we don't need to feed hardly any pollen patties leading up to the spring flow. Some years you just don't need to feed a darn thing. And then there's some years where your bees should be flying and getting stuff and you've had a late freeze or something. And that's where those pollen patties really make a huge difference. So that's how I feed. It's not like, oh, we're just going to feed this expensive stuff every single time. It's a tool to use at the critical moments.
All right, you got a question here from the Bearded Bee Works.
Hey, did you give Jimmy the cinnamon creamed honey? Hey, Josh Hager. Yes, I did. He was super excited, and he knows you. Jimmy's really good with remembering people that give him gifts. I guess that's what it is. Maybe it's just because I know too many people, I can't keep track. But Jimmy's like, yeah, Josh Hager. Is he going to come back and visit? And I'm like, no, we finally got rid of him. But no, we have your creamed honey. He's been sampling it. Yeah. I actually got the jar right here. He hasn't eaten a ton of it yet, but we've just taken a couple spoonfuls out of the top, and he's enjoyed that. But it's good cinnamon honey, and Jimmy is a huge fan. All right, next question, Chris. And thanks for helping us as one of our staff at the Bee Expo, Hager. Josh has helped us for several years. And he's got a great operation right there in Nashville, doing lots of creamed honeys.
Yeah, I think he took home about half the Expo's hardware at one point. So at the end, so
Yeah, he bought a ton of stuff from Jed Thorne. That was one of the things I really enjoyed seeing was Jed's new extractor. It was huge. There's a lot of new technology with the screen, and also I like how it funnels into the bottom. I ended up getting a clarifier from Jed myself. But yeah, Hager cleaned up some stuff from Better Bee. He got 2 extractors from Thorn. I'm really liking all the new innovation. And I love, it's hard not to love stainless steel. It's hard.
all right, I got a question here for you from Sean about slotted racks.
Cayman, how do you feel about slatted racks for small scale around 8 colonies? They can be helpful. They were used a lot in the past. I don't see people using them as much anymore. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I think there are some advantages. I think what's happened though, as Varroa has caused a decline in our bees and how successful we are, we've kind of shifted more of our focus towards that, and we don't see people fighting for to get the extra edge on honey production like used to. The people using slatted racks and this mechanism and extended entrance boards to be able to get more bees outside dehydrating the nectar more efficiently, and slatted racks were used for some operations to help facilitate that. And I've never used a slatted rack to any extent. I had a hive that had it one time that I got from a guy, and I used it for a season or two, and then just took it off. And so how do I feel about it? Kind of don't have an opinion one way or the other. Just I don't have enough experience really to have an opinion on it, Sean. But they look cool, and a lot of old bee books that I've read, they definitely use them.
Okay, we got next one here. John's asking about nectar flows and pollen patties.
Cayman, how early before nectar flow should we put on pollen patties? So I actually don't base it off of the nectar flow. I've always based mine off of pollen flows, and I keep records when we get our pollens here. So the maple is always our first, and that's around the second to third week of February. And in a really warm year, especially around 2008, 2009, we were having some really warm years. I was seeing it come in almost in January. It was that early. And you get these early pollens. And getting into your hives and observing them, even when it's 55 degrees, you don't have to don't spend 10 minutes inspecting a hive when it's that cool. But we definitely are in our bees and checking some things out really quick. And you pull a frame out and you put it right back in with the rest of the bees within 30 seconds, 45 seconds. You can keep it out a minute, but don't be keeping out any longer than that. We don't want to chill any brood. The bees will be fine. The brood's what we're concerned about. And we really want to see the pollen. How much pollen do they have in there? And so the pollen patties for me is observing how much pollen are the bees bringing in, how many days are they able to get out and bring it in. And then if I'm going, okay, I'm looking at the weather forecast, our pollen flow started the second week of February. And now I'm looking at the weather forecast. It's going to be 3 weeks since they've had any good flying days. I'm throwing pollen patties in there. I don't care how cold it is. 35 degrees, I'm popping those highs. I'm throwing it in between on the clusters, and I'm getting them to eat that. I don't want them to go, if they go a week without a pollen flow, and then they get one 7 days later and it's really good, that's okay. It's pretty normal. But they're going several weeks after that first round, because once they get that real first pollen, that's when they really trigger brood rearing. And that's when the race is on. And that first round of brood is extremely critical. And so the more successful that first round of brood is, the more success you're going to have in being able to split your bees and make honey crops. So really focused on the pollen flows and what they're doing. And that the pollen sub is just to fill any gaps there whenever I feel like it's necessary.
Awesome. Got a question here from Living Gardens Homestead.
What is the earliest date you are going to be making nukes? So I am going to start setting them up in March. I'll be raising queens and then making them up in the third week of March. And so hopefully we'll have good weather for mating and stuff like that. And it's one of those things where if you want 100 good queens, you need to raise 150 of them, because some of them, even in the most perfect conditions, it's very rare that I get over 90%. Sometimes I do. And I've literally had it last year where the same yard, I got 98%. I think I missed one. It was just whatever it was. I missed one out of the whole group, and it was quite large. It was like almost 50 queens. It was a massively good take. Pulled those queens out, ran another batch, same location. We had great weather, great flying days. I got like 60%. So the earliest date I am going to do it is towards the end of March. Hopefully the weather will be kind. This is in northern middle Tennessee. So you definitely got to watch it. We observe how the drones are developing to begin. In some years, it's behind a week, sometimes longer. Most of the time, it's within a week, one way or the other. Some years, it's a little earlier, but it's all about having those drones. And then hopefully you'll have good flying days. But heck, it could be a month later and you just get a lot of rain and you still don't have good flying days. So I found for me, third week of March is a good time.
All right. Got a question here from Short Pants Bee Farm.
Short pants. Just wondering if the time in Wisconsin was profitable enough to make it a yearly occurrence. It's not just about profit for me for doing that. Sometimes it's about savings and the health of the bees, which I did think it was profitable. It was profitable. But sugar syrup's gotten high. And so sugar syrup's expensive. It also takes labor to do that. Yes, it does take labor to take bees up to Wisconsin. It was quite a lot of work and a lot of driving. But my old CDL days really kicked into high gear. That and a little bit of coffee. And with my way that I react to it, I can drink coffee and literally drive all night long and not have a problem. So no problems for me. It was good. But the bees were better looking coming back from Wisconsin than the bees that I had here in Tennessee. Of course, we had a terrible drought this year in Tennessee, so that really, it was a terrible year in my area in Tennessee, because of the late drought. There just wasn't a good fall flow. It's not that we didn't overwinter bees, but the clusters from Wisconsin are like 2 frames bigger than any of my clusters here in Tennessee because they had better nutrition later into the year and more socked away. So it's not just about making honey up there. It's also about how healthy my bees are coming back, the lack of having to feed. Obviously, the real stuff is better. And then what the bees are going to look like the following season because of a better chance of good nutrition. Um, yeah, and just the fact that I was up there working bees in July and it was like 82 degrees. Oh my goodness. Awesome. But there's no way I'm leaving my bees up in Wisconsin. It's like a high of -1.
Yeah, the high is
like
not.
this week. It's crazy cold.
All right, you already answered all that. Here's a great one from John Reese, and then we're almost caught up here.
Ooh. How do you ask landowners putting hives on that you put hives on their land? So I've always just gone, I'm a fairly social person. That helps me quite a bit. And having that ability and also having a community that you belong with really helps. And what I mean by that is I go to church and I've been very active in that for a long time. So is my family. So I know a lot of people, and that really makes it easy for me to know folks and also have a rapport amongst the people here locally, and know who's who. So I really want farmers primarily. I've said this before. People who are more outdoorsy, maybe if they're not a farmer, people that are into camping, hunting, fishing. These people are typically used to getting bit by things and stung by things and smashing their thumbs with hammers and other events like that because they do those things. And so when they get stung by a bee, it's not as big of a deal. And they usually are just easier to get along with, in my personal opinion. I want land, but you gotta not have them close to cows or livestock. They will beat them up. -2 in Wisconsin right now. Woohoo! Yeah, let you know that you're alive. So I'm looking for those kind of people. I want to keep my yards, if possible, as close as I can, but beggars can't be choosers. So finding yards is very tricky. And really, I find yards by talking small talk. There are so many people that I've talked to that tell me that they just can't stand the small talk and they hate it. It's not about that small talk in the moment. It's about the relationship that you build. And I don't just talk with people just for the potential of things that I might get out of it, but that is one of the big benefits of small talk. Is your small talk might not mean that much, but it's amazing what you can do with some small talk over a period of time. I had a small talk with a guy in Wisconsin because I needed some equipment from him and I needed an IBC tote. And I said, "Hey, can I meet you at this location?" And I met him, and he's like a nice guy. He helped me throw it onto my truck, and I'm like, "This is going to be great for my bees." He's like, "Really? You're into bees, huh?" And we talked a little bit about bees, and I also talked about how awesome it was up here in Wisconsin. It was really beautiful. He talked about fishing a little bit, and so we talked about his fishing, and then found out I was from Tennessee, and he had done some fishing in one of the lakes down here. And this may seem silly, but hey, so we were talking about fishing down here, and I learned several things from him. He learned some things about bees, and then he goes, "You know what? I've got 2 properties up here in Wisconsin, and I think they'd be perfect for bees. It's far enough." I'm like, "Well, is it far enough away from your house? And I don't want to be close to any of your animals or any of your family's." Like, "Oh yeah, that won't be a problem." And immediately with the IBC tote, he's like, "We're not that far. Let's go." And so we did. And so sometimes it falls into your lap, but literally, if I had just minded my own business and said, "Here's your money, thanks for the IBC tow," and I'm out of there, it would have never happened. I've now had dinner with him, and we talk from time to time. Come to find out, we're both Christians and have a lot in common. So that's how a lot of times how I get my yards. No joke. Small talk. But if not, go up to a farmer. And I personally, I run enough bees in the yard, usually have, around 40, maybe a little bit more. I give a case. I give a case of pints or 1 pound jars. Yeah, 1 pound jars. That's what I offer. Um, and then I have a basic signed agreement that I'm not liable if they get stung. And I have 30 days to move out if they decide that my bees need to be moved. So it gives me some time. And on their end, if so I'm not liable if their stuff gets stung. And then if they run over my bees with a lawnmower or a bush hog, they're not liable either. Obviously, we have conversations, but you know, you can get more steadier contracts than that. But I keep mine pretty simple, and I make sure that I take care of it and keep it up as best as I can. And I mow it for them, and I always give them a little bit of honey, maybe a little bit more than I should, but you know what? I've never had an issue with the landowner.
Those Wisconsin people are just too nice up there, anyways. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, they're just hoping that we'll let them come down here and visit us when it's when 2 degrees below zero for the high. Hey, Paul Martins, thank you so much again for supporting us, buddy. It was good to get to see you again. Just got assigned my first Hives for Heroes newbie. It will be my first time being a mentor. Good luck with that, and we appreciate you doing that. The Hives for Heroes has so many people that are getting mentored right now, and so many people that are getting exposed to bees. And it's not just good for beekeeping. Obviously, some of these people are struggling with things, and sometimes it's PTSD from the military, and sometimes they're just struggling because maybe they don't have a family or they don't have some good relationships in their life. And maybe we can be that for them. And that's what Hives for Heroes is about, is community. So Paul, thanks for doing that. Being a teacher is a big job, and it really matters. And there's all kinds of teachers in this industry. Bob's one of my teachers. Every now and then I learn something from that pesky Canadian Ian Stepler, but mostly he's just annoying. But you know, we all can learn from somebody else. So thanks for doing that, Paul, and thanks for donating.
You got a good little question here from Honey IT Rock.
Any suggestions on who sells the best quality and most efficient honey straw making equipment? Ooh, so who sells it? That would be the Whiskey Trail Bees folks that were at our conference. The straw machine works extremely well. It's made in the USA. It's overbuilt. It is on the high end. It does. If honey is warmed up to 90 degrees, which is really what it should be for anything that you're wanting to move it through at any type of quick rate. The difference between room temperature and 90 degrees is quite huge, and it will not hurt the honey at 90. Get that in that straw machine, and it will just fill it up extremely fast. The only issue, and they have put out there that there's a different sealer that they're using, but the biggest issue that we have right now is a fast sealing mechanism. I highly recommend using theirs. I think the only innovation that they lack is, do they have a consistent sealer that will do a great job all the time? And it could be an inconsistency with the straws that they're using. They've tried several different types, so it's not like they're not trying. We really need something more tailor-made to our industry, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of custom-made stuff for these niche areas in our industry. But Whiskey Trail Bees makes them in Tennessee, and they do have a very good unit for that. There's a couple other companies, but one of them that's been on our conference in the past has had more negative reviews than almost anybody at our conference. And to beat the other guy that had negative reviews at our conference, you'd have to do something really bad. All right, Chris, next question before you have to mute me.
Yeah, I was listening very closely. Just here, I thought you could give some nice words of wisdom here for Robert. You had a couple comments about finding a mentor. He's been looking.
Yeah.
He's from Searcy, Arkansas, and this was his last comment. Just
give Arkansas, no mentors in my area, but we'll be joining a bee club, a wee club. I assume it says bee, and have a friend who's helping me. Watch Bob Benny's videos. I have a few that might be able to help. Paul Kelly up at the University of Guelph has some great videos, and there's several others on YouTube that has some good fundamental stuff as well. It's really about immersing yourself into the right places. And also don't get, Bob keeps bees differently than I do. There's several professional and commercial beekeepers. I just had an argument with several commercial guys today who just were like, Bob Benny's doing it all wrong. And I'm like, gosh, dang it. Would we all be doing things as terribly as Bob Benny? What the, how dumb is that? But they are super successful operations, and there are several ways to slice it. There are so many different feeds. There's so many types of hives. You've got to focus on having a great queen, dead mites, good nutrition. You got to focus on making sure that all the big things are taken care of, the fundamentals. Then protect your equipment. Paint it good, wax dip it, get someone to do that for you, whatever. Your investment is important. And so your woodenware, protecting your combs, protect your investment, and protect your bees as much as possible. And then realize that you're going to lose some bees, even if you have a great mentor. I didn't have a lot of mentors in my area. And to be honest, a lot of the ones in my area weren't trying to go to the level that I was going at. And at that time, a lot of them were losing as more bees or as many as I was. And so it was hard for me. It was an expensive way to learn. And the guys that take off fast find people that are very successful and learn from them. But focus on letting your bees never get low on food. That's such an important aspect of it. Bees just cannot handle going without long term. And understand your queens are going to get old and they don't always requeen themselves successfully. Splitting is fundamental. And at some point after a year or so into beekeeping, the bees are going to want to split if they're healthy because they're going to swarm. And you just need to split anyways because you're going to lose some hives. Some years I was talking to Richard Noel about this. He had no winter losses last year. This year, he's having some winter losses. Not all years are created equal. If you have a bad fall flow and a bad summer, it's going to be harder to have better looking bees going into winter. Stress equals loss typically. And so as a beekeeper, we're just really trying to focus on the fundamentals of babying our bees and try to enjoy the journey. And part of enjoying the journey is understanding losses are normal. So hang in there. Good luck finding a mentor. Bee books, YouTube, nothing beats real experience though. So get out there in the beehives, have some fun, and get stung once or twice. Everyone has some interesting stories about that. Good luck. Clay Buhner, thanks for being another one of our fine members and supporting us all the time. Clay, we appreciate you for all that you do for us on this end. And we have a lot of big plans. Just talking to Chris earlier about, the final days are in front of us before he just is going full time. And we are just so looking forward to that because of what we're going to be able to do. And I'm just ready for this spring to get here. And we got more snow today. I really want to get into some beehives. I got into it day before yesterday, just a few hives, and it was awesome, but it was cold and I couldn't do much. And there's a couple that were light on feed and I fed them, but we have a lot of exciting things on the way. And Clay, thank you for being with us for many years. Christian, Kama, do you recommend mixing Ultra Bee with honey for patties? As long as it's your honey, it works fantastic, Christian. I've done it before. It's way better than using sugar. Of course, honey is expensive, so you could just sell the honey and you could use a different technique. But if you want to have honey as part of it, or maybe you had some honey that you spilled on the floor of the honey house, this is typically where I get my honey for pollen patties from. Whoops, forgot to turn the valve off. And we got 3 gallons on the ground. That's a rough day, but honey makes prime pollen patties, and the bees will just eat them all the quicker, which is great. So, but just don't use anybody else's honey because it could harbor diseases and who knows what else, or it could be from Hong Kong and not be real honey anyways. Jake, I cannot believe you're asking me this question. Do you know how many times I've got asked this question since the expo? Like 400 times. I even made a public post in the Bee Expo group addressing this, but apparently nobody has seen it. They'll be out by about mid to late February. I'll make sure you get a copy. I really appreciate your help. And please don't beat me up the next time you see me. For anyone who
almost
has
bear proof.
Yeah. Jake, almost bear proof. And his last name has something to do with bears too. So God has a sense of humor, and he made Jake just about grizzly bear size. So I have to be fairly respectful.
You skipped over something I was gonna say. Oh, this is a good one here from Steven Sanger.
Hey, Steve, what would you say the big difference are between commercial and backyard beekeepers? Well, there's not as many big differences as you would think. As far as the actual beekeeping side, what's difficult about commercial beekeeping is, okay, we've got to have a CDL. We've got to be able to strap the loads like this. We got to be able to manage crews of guys. We got to be able to make sure as we're managing these guys that the proper work is still being done on each hive. And there's a lot of other logistics that goes into commercial. That's more the pollination gig. It's also about percentages, right? And so they do want to produce big honey crops, but the last thing they want to do is send a lot of swarms off. So, and commercial guys in some ways are just the same as backyard beekeepers. It's just a difference in scale. Some of those guys like nothing more than to pick on the other ones for how much bigger they are or how much better their methods are than the other guy. I can't believe he uses skateboards. Anyone who doesn't use a fume board to clear honey supers is an idiot. And I've seen them talk like that, just like a bunch of hobby beekeepers at a bee club that are crazy too opinionated. They're people just like the rest of us, but they are very intense. The fundamentals do not change from commercial beekeeping to hobby beekeeping. And the best small scale beekeepers that I know manage their bees very similar to commercial guys. They're just, honestly, there's several advantages that backyard beekeepers have. There's not the stress of having to load up bees and move them from one place to the other. There is some advantages to that, though. If you're in a long period of dearth for like 3 months, yeah, okay, there's some stress moving them, but goodness, you get up there and now you have nectars and pollens, and that really is good for the bees, and it causes a lack of stress. So the commercial guys are wise a lot of times moving their bees for that reason, but the commercial guys will go like, okay, I'm not going to try to force all these colonies to stay together because I know that I won't be able to, because there's too many colonies to manage. So I'm going to split all of them right before the honey flow, make a good little split so that they have a very low likelihood of swarming. And so instead of maybe getting 100 pounds of honey per hive, I'm going to get 70 pounds. But because I'm making that nuke, I'm getting a balanced form of income over here. I've diversified it. So if we have a bad honey year, I've still got nuke cells over here. I've retarded my swarming, and I'm able to manage more hives because I'm not having to fight swarming down so much. So instead of getting 100 pounds per colony off of 500 hives, I'm going to run 2,000 hives, and I'm going to split them right beforehand and get less of a crop, but I'm going to be able to manage more because I'm not going in there every week trying to prevent all of these hives from swarming, because big bees just want to swarm. So biggest differences, it's just scale. A lot of the guys who are very successful have been doing it for a very long time. And so they know a lot of things. And some of them will let you know how much they know. But ultimately, bees need the same fundamentals. And it translates from Canada to the United States to Europe. They need a great queen. They need to have low pest pressures, and they need good nutrition and a good cavity. And if you can give them those things, swarming is your biggest problem after that. So just focus on the fundamentals, Steve, and it's called good business, I suppose. Good management, good bee husbandry, and if you get to that point, you'll be doing probably a wonderful little sideline because the bees will just be growing on you, and you'll have a lot of honey to sell. I've said this before. There's guys I know and gals that I know that are running 20 to 50 hives because they just got so good at beekeeping they can't help it. And they make several thousands on the side each year on their side hustle and go on vacations off of their bees. I'd love to see more people doing that. Oh, Brian Reese joined the YouTube members. I mean, you might as well be at this point, Brian, Mister donate $100 here and there all the time, and thanks for Brian helped us out at the expo too. He's supposed to come and have fun, and he always just spends half the time or more helping us crush logistics. So thanks, Brian. We really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate him. He chased somebody out this year that no one wanted to. So I appreciate that. So
well, nobody can chase someone out of a place like someone from Jersey. Okay. Brian Reese might not be as big as some of the guys that I have on my team, but ferocious. You don't want to mess with those guys from New Jersey. No.
No, no.
So
All right. Boyd, had a question here about 5-gallon buckets.
what's the best tip to keep a 5-gallon bucket so it doesn't crystallize, and for how long before it degrades the honey? So Roy Boyd, good question. So technically, if you want to keep it from degradation, stick it in a freezer. It won't crystallize in the freezer, and it will actually slow down enzyme breakdown. So even if you keep it at room temperature, over time, honey darkens. And even if you keep it at room temperature for years and years, some honeys darken a lot faster than others because there's different structures of how they're made up from the different plants. So the best way to keep it from crystallizing and from degradation of any kind is to stick it in the freezer. It really slows down the activity. The warmer the honey gets, the faster the acceleration of the degradation. But typically, where you start to see things, because I mean, it's fairly natural for honey to be out in a beehive, right? So 90 degrees, even upwards of 100, is very normal in summer flows. And the bees don't monitor that upper super. So, I mean, they're okay with it being, a little bit hotter than the brood nest up towards the top where the supers are. So, if you're wanting to keep it from crystallizing, stick it in a freezer. But if you can't do that, definitely don't keep the heat on it long term. I Unfortunately, sometimes it just crystallizes. The worst temperature you can have it is the mid range, a little bit below room temperature, down into the 50s. That upper mid 50s, 65. Boy, that's a crystallizing range right there. And some honeys just don't want to crystallize. I have some honey that's been sitting on my shelves, hasn't crystallized in years. And then I've had some honeys that literally crystallize in a month. So it just really depends. But the freezer is the best place.
All right. Question here from Vlad.
Hi, Vlad. What's your favorite method for preventing swarming? Pulling the bees back and making a split. And so what we want to have is very powerful colonies. And we need to know our area as best as possible. Records are important. And honestly, learning about flora and fauna is half the fun in beekeeping, at least to me. So one of the cool things about going up to Wisconsin has been I've had to start learning different flows up there and how they impact the bees, because we can talk day length and temperature, but what impacts bees deciding when to brood and when to do things is based off of flows. So I want to have big bees going into the end of March. And what I'm doing early to manage swarming, really two things that are the big things, is equalizing. So if I have a yard of 40 colonies, some of those colonies are going to be way too far ahead in the middle of March. My bees usually don't start thinking of raising queen cells until about the second week on the earliest. I've had some years it's the first week, but most of the time it's around the second week. They think about swarming, building those cells. They don't think about leaving. They think about start building queen cells. And so I know this because I've observed it for years and kept records. And I also noticed that they're always my biggest and best performers, which is these are the ones I don't want to lose. So we do what's called equalizing. And there are some colonies that have a good queen that had a smaller cluster. Maybe they were made up later, whatever. And I will take a frame of capped brood from those powerful colonies, or two. A lot of times I'll take two if they're huge, and I'll put them in some other colonies in a shake of bees. And so I'll pull them back in March because, and this could be early March. This happens sometimes the first and second week. We're pulling them back, trying to get all of the colonies around the same size. So it makes management so much easier. And it slows those early swarmers down and helps get those ones behind up. And then once we get to April 1st, that's typically when our first nectars come in. So what I'm going to do is before my honey flow starts, about a week before, I'm going to go in and if they've got 8 frames of brood, I'm going to pull them back to 4 really good frames of brood, and I'm going to make a split. So we make a lot of splits, and this is good timing for us in around the 3rd week of March, because we want to make these nukes that we're going to be selling to people. And so we need bees for that anyhow, and it retards the swarming. And so some people could say, well, you lose some of that early honey crop, don't you? Not a whole lot. A little bit, not a whole lot, but a nuke is worth 195, 198 bucks. Yeah, we're doing 198 this year. So that's 198 bucks. We're not losing $198 worth of honey. We're losing maybe a little bit of the early stuff, but you can also argue we don't lose near as many swarms because we don't lose near as many swarms because of this. What we're trying to do is move on from the stimuli of swarming into the stimuli of long-term storage. That's what I call it. And bees have different ways of thinking as a colony. The stimuli of swarming is powerful, but if we can move them beyond that into long-term storage, if it's gone, it's gone. So the best way to do that is to pull them back. They're like, whoa, we must have swarmed or something. The population density's changed. And one of the triggers for swarming is a lack of young brood. Brood emits pheromones. And so when there's a lack of young larvae emitting pheromones, the balance shifts in there on the pheromone levels, and that triggers it. Plus, if there's not this usually happens when there's not a lot of room for the queen to lay. It could be too much pollen, it could be too much nectar, it could be both. And so, or the beekeeper has them in a single deep box, and they should have a double deep by now or more. So we want to cut them back. We want to, so that retards that swarming impulse. And now they're going to focus on expansion again. And we put the honey supers on it at the same time. We'll add 2 honey supers. And so now as the nectar is coming in from this flow, the bees are in expansion mode because they've been cut back. And they're already starting to put that nectar up in the honey supers because bees naturally want to get that nectar out of the queen's laying space. And so sometimes, though, the early flows hit so hard because we have so much pollens coming in and the queen's laying so hard, it's just too much. And when bees reach critical mass, they just naturally want to swarm. Anyways, it's in their DNA. They need to reproduce. So if we can curb that with the splitting, and then they have enough time to start moving up through the excluder into the honey supers, once they've committed to that, we don't deal with swarming near as much as most people. So that's a long answer, but honestly, it's not a quick answer for that. So there you go, Vlad. Thanks for hopping on and asking. That's a good question. Yep, younger queens definitely do retard swarming as well. Hey, Chickens for Eggs, thanks for being one of our members. And yes, equalizing hives can be really helpful. It can be very quick, very easy. And what we find is there's these good queens that, they were late splits a lot of times. So they have like 2 really good frames of brood. And you're like, oh, these are going to be some good bees. The queen's laying a clean pattern. The bees look good. They're just way behind the other ones that have maybe 6 frames of brood or 5 or whatever it is. So we'll give them a good frame of emerging brood or a shake of bees or whatever. And man, that just makes a big difference. And if you have 40 colonies and only 8 of them are really far behind, or even 10 of them, but you're able to pull out of 10 other colonies, and maybe some of them are right where they need to be, you can really bring those guys up. And where you might have only got maybe 1 super of honey off of those little guys because they're only prepared to make honey later into your flow, now you're able to capitalize on that early stuff too. And it works very, very well.
Cayman Gary had a good definition here.
According to the FDA, I believe they say to be a commercial beekeeper, you have to have 500 plus hives. Yeah. The FDA doesn't even know what honey really is according to their definitions of it. So I wouldn't put too much stock into what they say. They actually don't have a clear definition on what honey is. It seems pretty cut and dry to me. If a honeybee doesn't produce it, it's not honey. Boom.
Well, I think you could have that fun conversation with almond milk.
Yeah, well, you didn't know this, Chris. They actually have little machines that milk those almonds.
We could just play the clip from Meet the Fockers and talk about milking cats. So
no, let's please not.
No, we're good. Here you got Brian coming in.
Dial it in 2025. Hey, Castle Hives. Of course, him and Jason Crook with Bohemia Bees produced the Queen Right Dial. You guys have seen that on some of my hives. Thanks for supporting us yet again, Brian. And good luck there in Ohio as it is chilly as all get out. Brian Reese says, can you please post the link for the nukes again? Do you mind doing that, Chris?
Already done. You're
So
behind.
thank you, Chris.
Of course. Yeah.
I should have
And
known.
again, not that you can't. Yeah, I posted again. So here's the link if you want to
So that's
screenshot
the
or something.
forum for getting on our list. We'll be reaching out to folks, and we will have a limited supply of our nukes, and we will be selling some extra early spring nukes in March for those who want to get a big jump on the season. And if you have drawn comb for them and you manage them well, there's a good chance that they'll pay for themselves in the honey in the first year, because those bees are just so stinking early. You might have to give them a little bit of feed because they're so early, but yeah, it's a nice little jump on the season. Cayman, if you were to settle again, which state would you choose for beekeeping? Oh, that's a fun question. I have so much family here, of course, but if you take the family out, let's say I'm single, my dad disowned me, my mother hates my guts, and all that, and I was like, I want to beekeep somewhere. Based off of what I know right now, southern Florida, southern Louisiana, some parts of Mississippi are pretty good, and some parts of southern Texas are pretty good. Hawaii, if it wasn't so expensive to live there, but it's a wonderful place for honeybees, and the Big Island especially. I've visited 3 times, 1 time for work and 2 times for fun, and that's a good spot. And there's some other areas as well, but those are some of the most prime places. I mean, there's commercial beekeepers like crazy, and a lot of them weren't from there. They were, maybe they were in the Dakotas, or they were in California, or they were in New England or Wisconsin or wherever. And Chris Werner, many of those of you who have seen his videos with Bob Benny or some that I've done with him, he's originally from Wisconsin, but as commercial beekeepers, it gives them a huge jump on the season and is way more successful taking their bees down to Florida for the wintertime. Then they make a honey crop down there, but mostly focus on selling, getting bees, and they sell tens of thousands of queens and queen cells. And then once they're done with Florida and those bees are strong and healthy, they take them up to Wisconsin and make a honey crop up there and sell nukes and stuff as well. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. There are some advantages to moving bees, and not all areas are created equal. So if you see people being more successful than you, sometimes they just have an easier row to hoe for bees, just plain and simple. The area I live in, Tennessee, not the hottest spot for bees. Totally not. There's better places in this state towards the mountains, and definitely over towards Memphis and the Delta area. So you can move, but or you can get creative, and you can find different ways to generate income. Instead of focusing on selling bulk honey at $2 a pound, let's create a brand. Let's build a customer base, and let's get more premium, and let's build relationships. But there's different ways to do things, and as beekeepers, we need to sometimes, I think, break out of the box and think a little bit more. All right. A few more questions. We're going to go 12 more minutes. So start throwing your questions in, everybody. I'm looking forward to this season so much. This is the first time I'm going to have a lot of help, and I've got some big plans. I can't wait to show you everything. I'm going to be visiting Bob Benny soon, and I'm looking forward to that trip, getting some gear from him and a few other odds and ends. Chris, we have any more questions? Or we have anything loaded?
No, we are.
Wow. Anyone has a question? This is the golden opportunity. Now is the hour.
Did you say you answered the question on Facebook about checkerboarding your frames in the horizontal?
I did. I actually did get that.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I know you answered one, but.
Yeah, Gary Stewart on the let me know if we come across a question. Oh, Jeremy Lindsay has a question. Jeremy, goodness, you text me with your questions. Jeremy runs our trade show. Oh, just getting in here. Hey, Mike Spee. So the picture, those of you who are wondering, I know some people asked about it earlier, but some of you are more into this more recently. That's actually a picture of oxalic acid. It's been registered here by Mike Spee's LLC, Easy Ox, and they were at our conference. And so it's nice to have
Buckeye people.
Yeah. More Ohio people. Great. So Irish or Buckeyes? Can they both lose? Is that possible? Can we just say, you know what? Let's try again next year. No, I'm not going to take a side on that. Honestly, okay, I'm going to take a side. Chris is a good buddy of mine. And this shows you how much friendship will do. Because I've always hated Ohio State as a SEC person and as an Alabama person. Ohio State cannot lose enough. But I feel equally the same way about Notre Dame. So, but Chris is my buddy, and I want him to be happy because I like him quite a bit as a friend. So, Buckeyes, let's go. I cannot believe I'm saying this. Let's go, Buckeyes. That gum,
We got that on film, everybody. We got that on film.
that felt more weird than it should have felt. Is there a date for the North American Honeybee Expo 2025? So we are close to something. We are not 100% there. Based off of where we're at right now, I feel like that question is going to be answered in the next 2 weeks. So I'm hoping that is the case for my sanity and everyone else's ability to plan. So thank you for that question. I hope to have an answer for you very soon. So getting to Gary Stewart's 100 hives. Rylan, been a while. What is your favorite part of beekeeping? Making new bees. I mean, I love this industry. I mean, I love seeing so many things in it. It would take me an hour to begin to get there. I love the old books. I love the old bee gear. I love all the knickknacks. But my favorite part is seeing a brand new queen come back and start laying and building up a colony and just following along all year long till the next year where they make a honey crop and make their own splits. It's kind of like when I raise chickens. The chicks are very cute and it's a lot of fun. Young queens and young splits, but getting to see a honey crop, it blows my mind. The closest thing to it is the Expo because it doesn't seem possible because as an individual, there's just no way you could ever do something like that. But I have a great team of people, and then there's the companies that come there and they all perform their individual tasks for their booths, and just to see it happen, it's like watching bees all of a sudden just do all this miraculous stuff, and it's just a numbers thing. And so I really like seeing a young colony grow. I like to see things build. Thanks for supporting us again, Rylan. Good to see you. All right. So Gary Stewart said, to me, 100 hives would be a full-time job, but they say that is just a sideliner. There's guys running 500 hives as a sideline operation. They're working full-time and they run 500 hives. But what they do is whenever the bees get to a certain point, they split them and then they add supers. And they do lose some swarms, but they split them so hard they don't lose many swarms at all. They don't get a huge honey crop, but they don't have to really micromanage them as much in the spring. And they sell bees off. So what they do is they manage the 500 colonies, and let's say they have 500 coming out of winter, and then they're going to take them to the almonds, and they're going to contract someone to do that a lot of times for them. So let's say I have a 500, they take 400, that's a semi-load of the almonds, get that pollination check, bring those back. Maybe they've got some of the other 100 doing a little bit better now, catching up. And then out of the 500 that they have, some of those that are going to be too big, they're going to try to equalize them out, but they're going to split them, and they're going to sell a nuke off of those things or singles depending on what they want to do. But they're going to buy queens because they don't have time to do it. They got a full-time job, so they're going to buy queens from another commercial guy or queen cells, and they're probably going to have seasonal help too. A lot of these bigger sideliners have seasonal help, and so and they'll keep it in a low maintenance way to where they split them, never let the bees grow too big to where they lose a lot of swarms, and they'll make a smaller honey crop, but they'll still make a honey crop. And over 500 hives, I mean, heck, if you can get 40 pounds off of 500 colonies, what is that? 20,000 pounds of honey, Chris? What is that? Is it more?
Sorry, I'm answering questions. What did you ask me? What's the math?
All right. Someone's already probably answered this.
Well, just tell me what it is. I got it.
All right. I'm doing it now. I don't need you anymore, Chris. I don't need you. So we got 500 hives. And we're averaging, let's just say 40 pounds. Yeah, it's 20,000 pounds of honey. Okay, not going insane. So 20,000 pounds of honey. And now you can, when the honey crop is done, split the bees in half, sell off half again to another commercial guy who wants to expand, and boom. Maybe do another pollination contract or two in there. There's several ways to do it. But if you want to run big colonies by yourself, you've got to create systems to keep it low management for you, low maintenance. And then you also have got to, maybe have some seasonal help. We'll get a couple of our buddies to come and help us do extraction work or various things. So get a few buddies and pay them good, or at least feed them well, one or the other, and so you can get those guys to come back. Nothing like being Tom Sawyer out of those old Mark Twain books and getting other people to whitewash the fence for you. Classic.
All right, you have a question here from. We have a couple questions. Question from Chickens for Eggs.
Will you continue to give updates on that video series you did last year, a nuke follow along? So I actually did check them out, and they're still doing quite well. So not as big of a cluster as I would have liked, but that's very common with all my Tennessee bees this year because we just didn't have a fall flow. So they're about 6 frames of bees right now, which is still fine. We can make honey crop off of that, but I will be continuing that. I actually have a video or two that I have not posted. Later in the fall of this last year. So, but yes, I will do a little bit more videos on that into its production. I'll probably end it once they produced a honey crop, I would say. Andrew says yes, and feed me that breakfast you had this morning. I had nothing to do with that. That was all Laurel. Laurel's a fantastic cook. When are you flying me out? Well, don't call me. I'll call you, Rainier.
Got a question here from Alex.
Alex, how do you guesstimate how many bees are in a cluster based on the cluster on a 2 deep box? So the best way is not to look from the top, is to look at the bottom. Look underneath and see how many frames that they're occupying at the bottom. The top is going to always be exaggerated and be incorrect. So when you grade a hive, you do it from the bottom. So when I tilt them up, if I'm like, they've covered pretty much all of the, these 6 frames, 6-frame cluster. And a lot of it depends on temp too. So if it's really stinking cold, I'm not checking during that period of time. But it's good to check on a 50-degree day or plus. And then that's how I grade them is from below. And you can pull the frames out individually, but I don't like to disrupt them if I don't have to. We'll usually pull a couple colonies apart and see what's going on. But I actually found one colony that had a patch of brood about that big 2 days ago. It's not very normal. Most of them did not. But this was one of the bigger ones, and it did have that. And there's no reason for them to have that right now. But sometimes, especially Italians, will do that here. Hardcore,
all right,
full Italians. Yep.
I got your last question for you here to wrap us up from Bob.
I'm a backyard beekeeper with 15 hives. Wow. I live in southern Kentucky. How long would be too long to travel with a nuke or 2 of bees looking to get a different type of bees in my yard? So if let's say that you're getting them from us or whoever, you can travel a pretty good distance. The worst thing is heat. I'm not really worried because I only sell strong nukes. And so if you get a strong nuke from somebody or me or whoever it is, and it's a good nuke the way that it should be, it's going to have to be stinking cold before those things take any damage from the cold weather. Way better to have cooler weather. But what would be bad is if we had like a 90-degree day at the end of April, which is not common, but it used to be a lot more common around the 2008, 2009, 2010. When I got married, 2011. Yeah, 2011. Whew. Skirting the edge here. So it was April. Dang it! Why am I doing this to myself? The day that we got married in mid-April, it was 93 degrees. It was hot, and we didn't have air conditioning in our vehicle, and it was hot. So that's terrible weather for transporting bees. Keep them cool. When it's hot like that, we actually cut out the top of the Jester nuke box and we tape a big screen section over the center because these are big nukes. And we want to get you what you're paying for. Our nukes are usually at least 4.5 frames strong. We can't let them be excessively powerful because if they are, and there's just too many bees, they can't cool themselves. The bees will stick their heads in all the vents and it'll plug it up and there's not enough air circulation. They'll die. So we make sure on our end that we do that right. On your end, you just got to make sure that you don't park them anywhere and let them get above room temperature or much above room temperature. Now, if you're driving, there's the wind chill and whatnot, but a lot of it is the preparation on our part, making sure the nukes aren't too powerful and in a good position. Another reason they don't need to be too crazy powerful is you don't want them to swarm first thing you get them. So we like to have them just right before they get to a really solid packed 5 frames. So you could get them in their 4.5 frames of bees, but the brood that they have in there, they need to go in a 10 frame box as soon as you get them, because they're not going to look like that in a week. Once a good frame of brood emerges out, they're going to be packed. And so the next thing is wind chill. Don't let them overheat. Don't stop at Cracker Barrel. Keep them in the back of a car for 2 hours and let them overheat in there. They'll overheat in an hour if the temperature gets too hot. Easy. No breakfast for Cayman tomorrow. Dadgummit. We don't have cereal either, so oatmeal. What expo did you go to? So I didn't go to an expo for my honeymoon. There was no expo to go to for my honeymoon. Yeah, we actually took her to Gatlinburg, of all places. It was Jake Osborne who actually came into my expo right after they got married. Jake is as hardcore as they come when it comes to bees. Pretty hardcore. Hey, you're welcome, the killer bees. Hey, love the bee with a sword and a shield. Very cool. So quick, I'm going to run through just like a couple things really fast, Chris. Again, we have nukes for sale. We'll be having more information on that soon. I'm going to have a YouTube video coming out, and I'm also going to have stuff on Facebook. Make it easy. Thanks so much of you guys who are our members. We're fixing to initiate some stuff for you. I apologize that I'm tardy. Thank you for being patient as we are mopping up everything post Expo. And then what do you use for winter feed? I don't do a lot of stuff for winter feed. I really try to get in there in September. Yep, you're way too light. And I mean, I'll pour the feed to them 5 gallons if I have to. Always best to let the bees cure it and put it into the cells themselves. But if I have an emergency, you need to make sure you have contact. Fondant is the best winter feed if you want to pay the money. The bees consume it quickly, and you just got to make sure it's touching the cluster of bees, and they'll eat it very easily. The sugar bricks, which is very easy. You can take 10 pounds of sugar, half a cup of water, mix it up until it feels like wet sand, and then you pack it into some cheap trays from, oh goodness, Dollar General, Dollar Tree, one of those places. And then you just put it in your oven or just let it dry out over time. But I usually put it in the oven, 150 for a little while, let it dehydrate it out. Now you've got a sugar brick, and that's harder for them to consume, but they will. And you can put that on the cluster, but best not to have to get in those situations if you can. Okie doke. Yeah. Brian says that's dedication. My wife would kill me if that happened. 100%. Jake might be a beekeeper's beekeeper, but unfortunately for his wife, he's a beekeeper's beekeeper, and he's got a long ways to go when it comes to making sure that he doesn't overdo it on the beekeeping. I don't have it figured out, so I can't give any recommendations on that. I'm constantly in the doghouse over bees. I'm trying to get better. Hey, Barry, good to see you. Thanks for the queen marking pins. So, by the way, Barry Brown, he donates queen marking pins to the youth program. But this is the pin that I'm going to be using this year. Barry gave me a few. And this is the Competitive Advantage MPD 15 paint marker. And they have regular blue, but it doesn't show good up on the queens because it's more like a navy when it dries, or a dark blue. This sucker right here, oh yeah, that's going to pop. So thanks, Barry, for those pins and for getting them for our next gen program. Thanks for everyone who has helped us push forth with our next gen program, donating here or with silent auction or whatever it is. Make sure if you know of any kids throughout the year, prep them. That'll open up for the youth around summertime. And then everyone who sponsors who donates in the chat and helps us, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys coming in, excited to do some beekeeping. The expo's fun. It's cool. It's all that. It's a lot of logistics, and there's a lot of crazy people that we have to deal with that you guys don't see. Bees are a lot easier. They're a little more chill. Looking forward to beekeeping with you guys and seeing you in a YouTube video. Save your questions for a live chat coming soon. We're going to be back on this regular. So if we don't catch you this time, we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next one.